Hello and welcome back to Lovett Film, and today's episode is a cool one if you were a fan of the Batman. Now, in particular to what Batman or which Batman I'm interviewing, it's all about an origin. Arkham Origins. I'm interviewing Roger Craig Smith, who voiced Batman in the Arkham game that came out back in 2013, which was such a cool game. You know, it was a spin-off to the original series where you had Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Arkham Origins was made by a completely different company to Rocksteady and was meant to be Batman before he became Kevin Conroy's Batman. Roger did such a unique performance as the Dark Knight. He was very, very different to Kevin. He was much more a younger Batman. I love the scenes where him and Alfred are in that Batcave and he's like, Alfred, when you see me, I'm not that kid you brought to his first date or whatever, you know. It was amazing. He was such a good Batman. He's also Sonic the Hedgehog. Most of the Sonic games you've played, it is Roger doing the voice. Roger is also in Resident Evil. He's in so many of things. Metal Gear Solid, I think. I mean, say yes to the dress. The list just keeps on going. Now, to assist me in interviewing Batman, I have brought in Chris as a co-host. And Chris is the guy to talk to when it comes to Arkham Origins. So enough of me babbling. Let's get talking to Batman. Just to let you know, we're Lovett Film, we're brothers. I'm Jamie, this is Christopher, and we're huge fans of yourself and what you do and the many characters you play. I mean, Batman, Sonic the Hedgehog, Ezio, I mean, Russian Batman, just to name a few, you know. And I'm fascinated by your job. It is honestly the coolest job I could think of for somebody to have who does voices. I mean, I don't have to tell you. I mean, just to start, how did you get into voice acting as a job?
So first of all, I cannot disagree with you. There are times that I have to pinch myself and remind myself of what it is that I'm doing as a grown-up for a living. Because there's so many times that I just go, you know, the as we say, the work, the acquisition of the work is the work, but the work itself is almost always, unless something's going horrifically wrong in a session, it's almost always fun because it's just such a blast. It's a neat thing to be a part. So thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for. Good Lord, what time is it where you guys are at?
Oh, it's not too late.
4 a.m.
Yeah.
4 a.m. Good Lord.
No, I'm joking.
Okay.
It's only 6 in the evening.
Okay, good.
just after dinner.
I like the backdrop, by the way, as well. Nicely done.
Oh, thank you. It's your Batman, as you know.
Yeah. Which is a bizarre thing to even go, oh, that's my Batman. Weird. No, so I got started, honestly, I guess if we want to get really kind of like, what do you say, philosophical about this. I mean, gosh, as a kid, and as like a little boy, I think little boys very often, we play all sorts of different little games, you round and you play with your G.I. Joe figures and you make all the sounds and you start trying to mimic the real world around you or just, a jet flying by or... and so I think mimicry began for me as like a little kid is to wanting to get to know how I could recreate something that I was listening to or that kind of thing. So I had a sort of an attraction to that. Then we cut to, of course, that translates into a kid that starts to find out that, oh, I can make people laugh. And that's a fun thing if I'm on a stage and getting attention and then also making people get into a better mood. That's a neat thing. So I got into like musical youth artist repertory theater, which is an organization called My Art that was based in Orange County where I was growing up. Did that in my sort of like junior high, middle school age. High school, did theater arts in high school. And then after high school, I was playing drums in bands. And then I got into stand-up comedy as a result of years of just kind of being a goofball. And everything kind of like culminated into me kind of getting back into going to college, getting a degree in screenwriting. But the entire time that I was even doing that, I was doing stand-up comedy. But I wasn't necessarily... on the advice of my high school theater arts instructor, Jan Laurie, who I went to go visit when I was thinking about doing stand-up, I went and visited my old high school instructor and said, hey, can I meet you after school and do my act for you and see what you think? And so I got to school at her last period. The kids all left, and there we were in the musical theater, or in the theater, I should say, at my old high school. Nobody else in there, and I did stand-up in front of her. And her alone, and we got done, and she goes, do you want me to be, like, honest, or do you want me to be nice? And I was like, come on. I'm like, you know the answer. I'm like, I want you to be honest. She was like, hey, It's funny, I guess, but it's not unique. And where are all the voices and characters you used to do? You were my little, she used to call me her little Robin Williams. You know, she's like, you were always just snapping off onto a character and off you went.
Fantastic compliments, by the way.
Right, yeah. Which I would argue, I'm like, no. It's like, okay, sure. Maybe in high school. Yeah, right. No, it was, but she gave me great advice and just saying like, hey, you have an ability to create characters and conjure up a character and a voice. Why don't you do that and then become the thing that you are, or become the entity or the person that you're lampooning and trying to make fun of, so that we can, along with you, laugh. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, instead of just making observational comedy, I'll do these characters and voices and say like, set up the thing that I'm about to, sort of satirize, but then have it be that I become the thing that I'm satirizing, and then we get to laugh as an audience and as a performer. So that was what I was doing a lot in my act. And throughout the years of doing that, after about 5 years of doing stand-up, more people were saying, oh, you have like a radio voice. Are you a DJ, or do you like, because you would MC events and do stuff like that as part of the work. You do private parties and things like that, and you MC the auction afterwards, all that. And so I would get people going like, oh, you must be a broadcast guy or that kind of thing. And I just kept hearing like cartoons, radio, broadcast, that kind of thing. And then finally the thing that the straw that broke the camel's back was we were doing a showcase night for the Aspen Comedy Festival at the Improv in Irvine, California. And there were 10 of us that were selected to perform. We perform. At the end of the show, the audience leaves. The woman that was there to evaluate us gets up and gives us critique and feedback and says, hey, I want to see you again. Let me know where you're performing next, that kind of thing. Or, hey, don't do props. You're not a prop comic, but I like your, this. She gets to me, and just goes, hey, who represents you for voiceover? And I went, nobody. She goes, you're kidding, right? Oh, I thought you were, you did so many characters and voices, I assumed you were a cartoon guy. And then she just moved on. Then she said, well, great stuff. And then moved on to the next person. Said nothing about my stand-up. Didn't tell me, like, great job, you should keep doing stand-up, or I really like your take on the world. And I finally went, you know what, I need to listen to that. That's an industry professional who sees comedians all day long. And here we go yet again. Her assumption is that I'm in a different part of the industry. And so I just was like, okay, time to find out what this is. I went home, Googled, and started pounding the pavement around town and recording. I took some classes and did my own little demos and started just kind of building a business in Orange County, California, just doing local not-for-broadcast stuff. Then it would start to turn into some broadcast things for some local TV ads and things like that for local cable advertisers, all that. And before you knew it, I was taking an animation class up in LA. Somebody was auditing the class, turned out to be a booth director at an agency. They brought my work in that night with my permission to go to the agents. Agents called me up 2 weeks later, had a week after that, got a meeting. And then the next thing you know, they said, we want to represent you. And I booked like a McDonald's radio spot for my first gig. And I haven't looked back. And it's been about 20 plus years of doing it. But yeah, that is the full story. That's
badass.
How I got started. Yeah, I got started by being a mediocre stand-up comic. It's my favorite thing to say.
I know a lot of actors do get started in stand-up, but like I'm glad that was kind of a happy accident for you, because like straight away, Roger, can recognize your voice. This happens a lot when we have different like voice actors on.
Bet.
There's that I can like, okay, there's like a few different characters I'm like hearing through that instantly.
Oh yeah.
I'm so glad you went for it in the
Mirage
end.
for one.
It's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of Sonic. He's in there every now and then. He sneaks in.
Literally,
that
you
was
just need to
meta
put
just there. What the hell?
The first thing I encountered you in, Roger, when I was younger, a kid, it was the first Batman game I played. So we're gonna just wind back time a little bit.
Batman behind me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Origins was actually the first one I played, but that instantly kind of you instantly sold me, because my brothers were like, "Oh, this is like a new Batman. It's not Kevin Conroy. Like, I'm not sure about this." But I was just a kid, and I was like, "Well, this is Batman. I don't care about the voice actor or whatever." So you kind of became my Batman as they encountered Kevin Conroy first. So it just leads me to my first question. Like, knowing that he kind of set the standard for that game with Arkham Asylum and City, like, how did you approach that, knowing there was that, that presence, that like legacy, and obviously now, of course, that he's passed away, unfortunately. Like,
yeah. Well, yeah. These are always not tricky questions. These are always just sort of things where you go, it's often been phrased in the past like, filling those shoes, and I have said so many times, I mean, there's nobody out there that can fill those shoes. It's a tremendous loss to not have Kevin around to still provide us his Batman. And I think maybe that's where it was. is we recognized that after 20 years of the two of them having done this, both Kevin and Mark having established their performances as Batman and Joker, that when Troy and I stepped in to do Batman and Joker, that I think Troy put it best, that it was like there was a sort of a point on the horizon that we knew represented what the fan base would know as their performances. With that in mind, we would do something. The fact that it was an origin story, we had it on good authority. They were looking to sort of do something younger sounding, and to kind of play with the idea, especially with the character of Batman, that it was a more unhinged, untested, raw kind of not all the lessons learned or wise Batman just yet. And so I think, we really did work very hard on the first 2 sessions alone. We kind of dedicated a ton of time to just experimenting. We did everything from attempting like a Christian Bale type of gravelly growl kind of a thing to see, what do we think? Because at that time, that was the Batman. Do we want to go George Clooney? Do we want to go old school? So we were doing all these different experiments with trying to find a tone. And then it just really kind of came down to if there was the smoothness of what Kevin had sort of established and the calm kind of confidence that was established in, and I'm not trying to define his performance in any way, but that tonal quality that Kevin brought to it, if we could not violate that, but also give a little bit more of a youthfulness to it, that we felt like it would work well. So that, and to me, it culminates in that scene with Alfred when, they're in the Batcave and he's like, "You're not some vigilante, you're a trust fund kid with too much anger," something like that. If I get that wrong, sorry, Martin Jarvis. And it was, and that's the crux of everything that was going on with that thing. So we really wanted to, and for me especially, that was the most important scene to perform in that game, was to establish that it's like, look, this is not that version of Batman, because the way that he's speaking to Alfred, the way that he's got confrontation, and the way that he's almost looking out his own internal frustrations about the world at large on Alfred, his biggest ally, the lesson that he needs to learn is he needs Alfred. He needs support and help. And yet here he is going against that. That was the part where it was like, okay, this is where we will sort of differentiate the voice. And it's not to be like, haha, we're doing something different. It was more just like, okay, we have the chance to sort of establish something that people could say, okay, it's not the Batman that we're accustomed to, but it's not violating the Batman that we know. And I think that's a threading of the needle that I talk about all the time with established legacy characters. Sonic would be one, Captain America would be another. Things that we know that have been performed by other people in the past and that have been around a long time. 2026 is the 35th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog as a franchise. You look at that and you go, there are certain, even with broad comedic characters like Sonic or adventure characters like Sonic, there's a box that these characters live in, and you can play within that box, but if you step too far outside of it, it really violates what we feel about characters. Unless you, from the get-go, establish we are going to completely blow up the box, like with Sonic Boom. We're going to break all the fourth walls. We're going to have all the comedy of, we're going to kind of make fun. It's going to be meta. It's all that stuff. But typically, if you're just doing an actual project, it's been no different with even Elseworlds versions of Superman Red Sun. It's like you still got to have it be believable in a certain way, and so that was what we just really tried to do. Make sure that this sounds like what the fan base would recognize as an homage and an understanding of what has come before us, especially with Kevin's performance, and then to just try to create something where like, but this is not that Batman yet. So let's play there, and I think we did a decent enough job. It's funny for me. I beat myself up thinking that I must go as low in my register as I can. I have to conjure.
Chills, by the way. Just, yeah.
But now I'm 50, and doing that now, I can hit that lower register so much easier than I could when I was a little bit younger. And it's funny because I always think, and then I go back and I listen and I go, man, I remember thinking, hey, I'm finally able to work in my lower register. And then I listened to that version of Batman, not as low as I thought, or I think he's supposed to be, or that kind of thing. And I go, yeah, I need to remember that to not violate that character as well. So, and I had to attempt that even with the rageful version that we did for Arkham Shadow, where it was like, we need to make sure that we get the Arkham Shadow version of Batman, given the timeline of where it was taking place, that it doesn't get too into this, my brain always goes to deep. And it's like, but he might not be there. Like when I watch those scenes from Origins and I just go, oh, wow, when he turns around, when you look at me. And I'm like, oh, I would have thought it would have been like, what do you see when you look at me? And it's like, no, that's not him. That wasn't him.
He's certainly more emotional, you know. It's
Yeah.
a complete. It's like you don't want to mimic Kevin Conroy to a complete thing, but you're taking Batman. Yeah, exactly. You're taking Batman from just an earlier chapter in his life. He's gonna be people change. We were actually going to ask about Arkham Shadow. Like, did you change anything about your performance going into that because it was a different point, a different chapter, or was it kind of the same?
Yeah, I guess, like, to be honest, it wasn't so long after that. So what we were doing was establishing his cooperation a little bit more, I think, with like Barbara, the Dick Grayson sort of setup, all that kind of stuff. We were trying to find ways of saying, okay, he's recognized now more so than when we were at with Origins that he does need to kind of work together with some people who are aligned with him. So Commissioner Gordon, Barbara, and Alfred, of course. And so I think there was a lot of that where we were like, okay, and you can see it even in the way that played out with with him with Harvey. And it's like, yeah, it's like the Leslie relationship, all those things that were there, I think lent themselves, allowed for, we'll go with that, allowed for there to be maybe less of his I work alone and all, even though he says that, and less of a sort of a petulant kind of like, leave me alone, I'm going to do this on my own, and more of a welcomed kind of environment of collaboration. But that said, boy oh boy, when he goes into interrogation mode, we still just tried to unlock the, I think of the moment where it's like, how many lives did you just take with Joker in Origins? And we start the game off practically in that way when he's so angry at the idea that people that he cares about are in danger, that he's a little unhinged even at the beginning of Arkham Shadow. So we tried our best to do that. Man, oh man, making a game is never easy because sometimes you're recording things in such a non-linear fashion that you just have to establish, okay, is this early, middle, or late Batman, like in this game, and you might record middle Batman on the first day, late Batman the second day, go right to, early Batman, and you just start kind of bopping around trying to map it out, and it can sometimes be like, oh my God, I hope these things marry well together, because we knew what we wanted to establish was those elements of him being still kind of angry, while learning, but still can tap into that anger.
Sorry for the interruption. If you're enjoying Lovett Film, why not show your support by subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell notifications, giving this video you're watching right now a like, and leave a comment, good or bad. We can take the abuse. Help us grow so I can keep giving you these interviews. Interviews like stars of Red Dead Redemption 2, actors in movies, Dexter Resurrection, you name it. Do follow our socials on Instagram. It's all just at Lovett Film. You find us very, very easily on Instagram, TikTok, and of course, if you're watching here on YouTube, we have it on YouTube. We have Spotify too, and Apple Podcasts. Now back to the interview. You guys killed it though. It was such a good game, Arkham Shadow, especially because it's in this VR world. I mean, it's such a different perspective as someone playing the game, and I'm excited to see where Rocksteady goes in the future with the Arkham universe, because now, as we said, like with Kevin having passed away, I mean, I hope this isn't the end for the Arkham games going forward. I mean, if they asked you, hey, would you take over the role of Batman in the main linear story after Arkham Knight, would you consider it?
Oh no. Of course.
I was like, he's crazy.
I know, yeah. No, who wouldn't?
When you said that, I was like, no, please. I don't want this to be the end.
It's and honestly, I have no idea what Rocksteady's up to or anything like that. And thank you for the kind words about. And that was really and truly Ryan Payton, CEO of Camouflage, and the work that he did with Meta on that was on our Shadow was like second to none, and I've never been around. I mean, it's so rare to be around a deeply passionate group of people who want to make a game and that have such reverence for like the lore and the canon and all that. It was a real treat to be in their presence and work on that game. And so yeah, so I'm glad that people enjoyed that. As far as like, yeah, you have to understand, like when somebody says like, and there's never, I just don't think we're gonna ever have the idea that, oh, you take over something anymore. I think throughout the years there have been a number of actors who have portrayed Batman in various projects, right? So I think it would be something along those lines, and I would have no idea if what they would want to do is establish somebody just completely brand new, which I could never fault them for wanting to do something like that. That is if they're doing another game. I have no idea. As voice actors, we're literally some of the last people to find out, which is actually something I've been trying very, very hard to work on with developers and with production teams to work people into the fold earlier on in the process. Put us under the heaviest NDA possible, work in fines for all sorts of leaks and things like that, should they be tied back to the actor. But the idea that typically we show up, sometimes you get the script the night before your session. If you're lucky. Sometimes it's as you're walking in, they're handing it to you to kind of go, this is your character, this is what you're doing today.
How do you memorize that as an actor on the spot? Like, are you good at getting this in, or no?
You don't memorize. I mean, like if it's a straight voiceover role, something like that. Now with Arkham Shadow, we were doing performance capture, so they would get us scripts, but sometimes those scripts the night before would come in hot off the presses with a bunch of changes. And, it's like the job is, I mean, I've learned, for me to learn that stuff, to get off book ASAP, I will, thank goodness for the phone, I would get the voice memo feature out, and I literally read every single bit of detail that's on the page out loud, and then just do a mock performance into the phone saying, like, interior Batcave, daytime. Batman is skulking around, frustrated at the Joker, for getting away with, murder or something. And then I'll say, enter Alfred. Alfred says, hello, sir, you need to go take out the trash. And then Batman replies, I don't have time to take out the trash. I'm trying to, and I do that. And then I play it back as I'm working out, going to dinner, getting ready to go to bed. And I just keep landing that stuff in my brain so that the next day when we show up on set, I'm at least off book and ready to know all the feeder lines, everybody's, position, what the scene involves. But no, if it's just straight VO, very often we're doing what amounts to cold reads. And sometimes, I did a session yesterday with a client who I had nothing but my lines. No stage direction, no context. And then you rely very heavily on your director, as I do very often. I ask a ton of questions now at this stage of my career to kind of really understand, did I just get done fighting? Am I about to fight? How far away is the person? What's the environment that we're in? Is there any exterior sound penetrating this scene? Do I need to talk over wind? Should I add pre-life and post-life? If I did just get done fighting, am I a little bit winded? Do you want me to kind of wipe the blood off my mouth, as I'm getting ready to see stuff like that? It's all very when you get nothing but lines, you have to ask a ton of questions. And so that's kind of how that stuff works. It's rare that we get a chance to be early in the process. And sometimes I find that to be not a service to the production, because there are those of us who have a reverence for these characters. And I'm not saying that writers don't, but sometimes writers are under tremendous pressure. They're getting feedback from their client, telling them they need to incorporate this, incorporate that, remove this, plug this in over here. We need to change the order of this. And sometimes they'll just plug in dialogue, or you'll just come across something that you go, I just don't feel like Batman would say it that way. Or could we say it like this? Could we keep the dialogue but change the order? These are things that we as performers that have been doing it this long, we know. We know, like, hey, this violates the box. It's like it's outside of that. So how do we get back in there and tweak this a little bit? And I'd love for there to be the option going forward that and I try to work with this with my representation to say, hey, reach out, get set up a meeting, get a Zoom meeting with the developer if they're interested. If we're getting a call back, let's see if we can get a meeting going so that we can try to find out what it is that they're trying to execute, instead of just blindly throwing an audition, hoping that it lands with not knowing any of the conversations that are taking place in their room, that kind of thing. So I'd love to say that it's like, oh, I work very hard and get all the time in the world to memorize all these lines. 9 times out of 10, it's literally on a computer screen. It's scrolling up, and you go, okay, I see what we're doing here. And then you just go. So it's quick. Speaking
of receiving scripts on the day, and, you were talking about the fight scenes there briefly. One iconic boss fight, just lastly before we move off, Origins, is the Deathstroke boss fight.
Deathstroke. I knew it was going to be Deathstroke.
So cool.
That scene is the reason why this game is because the perception of the game, I think it's certainly changed over the years, especially with online stuff like that. On TikTok, the most two common things I see is people talking about that boss fight, and then that Alfred scene you went on earlier. So what was that like? That the boss fights, because that's the most renowned thing about that game, I think.
So from a performance perspective, you have to imagine most boss fight stuff is just like a setup bit of dialogue that happens. And especially for Batman, if they're busy fighting, there's not a lot of communication that's taking place mid-fight. I think one of my favorite lines from that is when they're squaring off and they're circling around each other, and he says, "I'm not playing games, Slade." And I was just like, "Oh, that's so cool." And here's a fun little note too, that Mark Ralston, who voiced Deathstroke in that, was my Commissioner Gordon in Arkham Shadow. So you have another tie-in of that coming back. Yeah. So anyway, sorry. It's funny because I think a lot of the boss fights just involve me just doing like fighting efforts and grunt sounds. So the impact that the player, that's another weird thing about the job, is that it's like so much of what I do is this working with the production crew, like trying to wrap my brain on what it is that I'm trying to do, theater of the mind. Hopefully I'm going to deliver a performance that they can, plug in and that it'll work well. But then it's gone. I always call it like we birth this vocal baby and then hand it over to people, and it's kind of up to them if they're going to make that baby ugly or pretty or, or a good fighter. So I really don't recall a lot of boss fight stuff. The aftermath is all I'm recording, but the player experiences it from the perspective of like having to go through what you have to go through to defeat that boss. And Deathstroke, of course, is the one that I hear about all the time. People are like, "Oh man, the Deathstroke boss battle."
It's unbelievably cool, and I could sit here and talk to you about Origins for days and days, but
as could I.
It's so cool, but there's so many things you've done that's just interesting for me, talking to someone from a performance perspective, because Batman, Sonic the Hedgehog, you're doing your own version of these pre-established characters. Did you find doing Ezio in Assassin's Creed a lot more, I wouldn't say easier, but freer, because you were the first guy playing Ezio, so anything you did was, that's Ezio.
Yeah. You know what? So I say that, like when people say, "Do you have a favorite project?" I always go, lightning has struck so many times in my career. Like, no, I don't have a favorite. I will say that I have a deep fondness, and the crew that we established on Assassin's Creed 2 specifically, where we still had Patrice Désilets as part of the project. He was very involved at every single voiceover session and guiding so many aspects of the post-production process. And I think it really showed. I think it's testimony to the fact that they took 3 years off after AC1 to work and polish and create these things, and then they just went with a brand new protagonist. And from birth, essentially, B-button or whatever to spank the baby as the doctor. So like, hey, we have to have that. But no, I mean that thing, yeah, that project specifically, there was a lot of like, by the same token, when you've got somebody like Batman or Sonic the Hedgehog or Captain America or something that's just established, you can sit there and go like, "Oh boy." But that there's a built-in fan base. That there's going to be people that are going to be paying attention to it, that are going to be excited about it and interested. When you get to a character like Ezio, and you're doing everything from like an Italia Spanglinish accent, as I've called it, where you're kind of futzing with Italian, a little Spanish in there, definitely Western English, that kind of thing. You're doing all these different things, and far more dramatic than, say, Sonic the Hedgehog or anything like that. It's one of those things where you go, this is so cool. This is what we want to get involved with in the industry. This is what we long to do when we get involved. And the idea that we were doing something new and fresh is both exhilarating and frightening at the same time, because you just don't know how it's going to be received. You feel like you're doing good work. You have no idea if people are going to like it. And the fact that AC2 came out and became such a hit, and that it just kind of launched so many things after, was this many years later. I still have people coming up to me and just saying, like they cosplay as Ezio, and these people that come up and they go, "That character means so much to me." And it's just the icon of the franchise now. Between Altair and Ezio, you've got the two. Those are the two, and you just go, okay. And there's a different version of that for everyone. It's like I get it. It's no different than you saying, "Hey, I was 12 and played Origins, and you were my first Batman." There's going to be people who go, "Ezio, who?" And it's our job to say, "No, you don't know." It's like, you got to go back and play that. And I'm still, fingers crossed that someday they do something again with Ezio. I would love to have that chance, but. No, I think, establishing something new it's got a lot of freedom, but then you don't know where the box is. You don't know if that character, you're kind of pushing the boundaries of where does this character live. But it's just testimony to. We had Corey May writing on that. You had Patrice. You had Amanda Wyatt Pedriano, my director, on that. Everybody worked so hard. I mean, I had Ida Darvish, who was my dialect coach on that game. Like there were just so many awesome human beings. I'm forgetting to name so many, and that's horrible. But no, it was a real special thing to be a part of, and I'm stoked that to this many years later that it still resonates with the fan base.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, how do you feel going from a character like that, brooding character like Batman, Ezio, to Sonic the Hedgehog? Complete contrast. Like, it's incredible. Like, that's range, in my opinion. That's like complete. Like,
yeah, Roger, you're able to do some stuff. You know, that voice is impressive.
Thank you. I don't think too much about it. It's funny. I just look at it and go, they're just characters, you know, because I now doing Mouse from Give a Mouse a Cookie, which was a big Amazon thing, and it was like chuckle at going like, how do you go from that guy to being Batman to being, or Kyle Crane, you know, like just dropping F-bomb after F-bomb after F-bomb in the game. No, that's the best part about my job. Like when you said, I think you have one of the most cool jobs out there. It's like, yeah, I get to literally go from doing Sonic the Hedgehog to doing Batman, and sometimes within a day. You know, it's like, and it's utterly surreal and bizarre, but it's so much fun, and it's fun to be able to sit there and go like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm very fortunate that I get to be capable of doing it, and it's not as if I go, oh well, I trained. I was like, no, I was just a dorky kid playing with GI Joes and trying to make machine gun sounds, and then cat sounds and dinosaur sounds and you name it, and then all of a sudden singing and doing all these different things as a kid, and kind of going, oh, here we are. Maybe that's led up to it, but it's as good as it gets to go from a talking blue hedgehog. And again, another thing is just like, my gosh, one of the icons of gaming in general. You know, like 35 years. It's only 40 years, I think, next year for Nintendo. Is that the Nintendo anniversary is next year?
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. So it's like you just go, man, and when you think of gaming, the concept of Mario and Sonic, those two entities, especially back when there were the console wars back in the day, it's just incredible. So yeah,
is there like a favorite Sonic game that you might have recorded on, like, out of all of them?
Yeah, we're talking almost 16 years now. It probably is 16 years if we go back to when I started before the first games were actually released. But no, you know, it's kind of a toss-up between Colors and Generations. Those games I thought were kind of fun. They were in more of that family-friendly vein of Sonic that I love, because it's great to have a character like this that is so accessible to kids. And just kind of campy, fun dialogue. That's where, like, no copyright law in the universe is going to stop me. That's where Baldy McNosehair came from. That's where, like, enjoy your future. It's going to be great. You know, like all these things that the playing with the classic Sonic and the modern Sonic of Generations, and just the wholesomeness of Colors. And it speaks to it speaks volumes to the fact that they've re-released and remastered, you know, versions of those games. So yeah, no, I guess between those two, and then of course my pat answer is the next Sonic game.
Yes.
So far, so good. I don't know what's coming next, but or if I did, I would have to not, you know, act like I did. So maybe I'm acting. But no, it's the next one. I'm always thrilled at a chance to get to do another Sonic game.
Do you have a certain thing that people immediately go up to you and go, I recognize your voice from this? Because, I mean, even while preparing for this interview, I mean, I realized you were the narrator for shows I've heard in the background millions of times, like Say Yes to the Dress. My sister is obsessed with that. And when I listened to an episode in prep for this interview, I was like, oh my God, that's Roger Craig Smith. I just didn't associate that. But is there a certain thing that people go, hey, is that your voice from that?
I guess, you know what, you never know. I mean, it's just whatever everybody's into. I mean, like, I always laugh and kind of go, you know, that's the funny part. Like, if somebody says, like, what do you do for a living? I might just kind of say, like, oh, I'm a teacher. You know, school kids, because they usually just leave you alone. Like, oh, that's a tough job. And you go, it definitely is. You know, it's like, because the next question is always like, oh, a voice actor, anything I would have heard of? And you're like, I don't know. I don't know if you don't play video games, you're not going to be impressed with what I start telling you. If you don't watch animation, you're not going to be impressed with what I start telling you. And if you haven't watched Say Yes to the Dress, but usually usually the one gig, if I go through Sonic the Hedgehog, Mirage in this, Kyle Crane, like you name it. If I Outer Worlds, that just came out. No, nothing. Okay, you start like trying to talk to them or go like, hey, how about this? Captain America, Avengers Assemble. No, okay. Did you ever watch any Cartoon Network? No, okay. And then eventually I just go, well, I also narrated Say Yes to the Dress for about 14 seasons. They go, I watch. Well, I mean, my wife watches that. I go, yeah, like you don't.
Yeah, sure.
Know you watch.
Like I did earlier, going my sister. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. My sister watches it. Yeah. No, it's funny because those things that was like the number one show on Fridays on Discovery for a number of years, and so yeah, you just think, and it's a little surreal to kind of have people go. There have been millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people around the world who have heard my voice in a project of some sort, be it a game, animation, a film, TV shows, things like that. It's pretty wild. It's something I don't try to think about very often, except maybe in an interview and kind of talking to people about my work. But for the most part, no. I don't have like, there's not one. I do get a lot of Sonic because just there's also never been a better time to be a Sonic fan. There's the cinematic universe. You've got Ben Schwartz doing that. You got Devin Mack doing the voice in the Prime series. There's like all this content. We've got unbelievable amounts of licensing. Waze just had me doing, Sonic the Hedgehog as the navigator for the Waze app, so, like in 300 feet, turn right.
That's you. That's actually,
it's crazy.
So never knew that.
Exactly. All those things. It's like you've just got like, man, there's never been so a lot more Sonic content maybe by comparison, but there was a gentleman that was dropping something off for Amazon the other day, and I was like in paint splattered everything, like covered in like, grime, and I was working in the garage, and this kid came up and I was like, hey, you want to hand it to me? And he goes, no, I have to put it down on the driveway and just take a picture just so I can show that I delivered it. He's like, you don't have to sign for it. And I was like, oh, okay. And he puts it down and he snaps the picture and he looks at his phone and I see him kind of like cock his head to the side and he goes, are you Batman? And I was like, one of them, sort of, yes. And he just goes, I recognize the name. As soon as I took the picture, I was like, wait a minute, Roger Craig Smith. And he's like, well, it's really nice to meet you. And I was like, what's your name? And I just like, you are the reason the criminals breathe easier when the sun rises. And he's like, oh, okay, thanks.
It's like he's meeting the real Batman. That is.
But it has to be a letdown when he's like 5'5" and on his driveway covered in grime and dirt. And it's just like, hey, man, thanks. And so I was chuckling, thinking, oh boy, here we go. It's going to be a Sonic. And he was like, nope, Batman. So it just depends. It's whatever. And every Batman fan always tells me, oh, I hear Batman in your voice all the time. Or Mirage, or Apex fans, that kind of, it's like, or Sonic fans, they're like, all I ever hear is Sonic. And I'm like, it's because that's the thing you're into. So of course you're going to hear me. It's a little bit of me in there.
Like even Chris Redfield in Resident Evil, like I hear straight away. I'm like, I only just realized that. I mean, I had a question about that earlier on. I forgot about it. I was like, oh, hold on. I remember because I can hear him in your voice because it's you. It is the coolest job in the world.
It is. And I think Bob Bergen, who I took it, he was literally the instructor that I took that animation class probably 23 years ago. 22 years ago, something like that, maybe. I'm trying to remember where it was. Oh, no, I'm incorrect. It would have been about 20 years ago. I think he said something, and maybe he borrowed it from somebody else, I don't know, but he said, look, we borrow voice, but we never borrow character. So there's only so much that the human voice can do that we start to hear it like an audible fingerprint where we start to kind of go, oh, that's, I recognize my friend, that's, my colleagues in these games and things. But we do try to separate character all the time. Then the great Mel Blanc, who, you could hear similarities in all of the characters that he did, but they were so distinctly different in their characterizations that it's like that's the art, I guess, of it. And so yeah, I get it when people go like, oh, I hear you in this thing, and I go, yeah, but it's not the same character. It's like, Batman sounds like Sonic. I'm like, no, he does not. No, he does not.
I'd love a crossover game with Sonic and Batman.
So would I. I was so disappointed when they did the DC DC Sega crossover comics. And I was like, oh, man, Sonic's got to be. And then I was like, well, no, it makes sense that Shadow would be Batman. I was like, all right, I guess I'll be Flash. I'll be fast, I get it. But no, it was, it was too funny. I was like, oh, man, it'd be so much fun to. They were working on that while we were working on Arkham Shadow. And I was privy to it coming out. And I was kind of chuckling, going, I'm on this soundstage recording as Batman, talking to people who are, from DC that are telling me about this crossover with, Sega and Sonic and all that. Like, that's a wild, wild ride.
Yeah, I mean, Superman Red Son as well. Your Batman in that is so different. He's Russian. It's like such a departure from your other, versions of Batman, like whether it be Batman Ninja or Arkham Origins. How did you approach that? Was that intimidating at first, or was it, as someone who does voices, yes?
It was cool to play such a dark. I mean, that when he, spoiler alert, meets his demise, I was like, really? I'm looking at Wes, our director, and I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, that's crazy. I had actually not been all that familiar with the Elseworlds versions of these things, so it was all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is so fascinating. The idea of Superman landing in Stalin Russia as opposed to a cornfield. In the U.S. And so I was thrilled at the chance to do that, because I did not know what was coming. Again, that's one of those situations. You show up and you start doing what you're doing. It's like it wasn't as if I was like, oh, this Batman is. I mean, I knew that he was going to be Russian. I didn't know quite the storyline or the arc of what he was going to be doing. So it was wild. I was more concerned about the Russian accent than anything. And when I got there, I'd been working with a dialect coach leading up to it. And I had this really thick Russian accent, and they're like, we're pulling back from that because we don't want it to sound too hard to understand, and so we're kind of mixing a little less of the Russian accent. I was like, okay, all right. So, yeah, I tend to get in my head more about the technical aspects of the job than I do the actual performance to begin with, and then it's performance.
I loved it.
No, honestly,
thank you. That was fun.
Absolutely, Batman. Also, I think hopefully if they ever make a live adaptation of that, or not live adaptation, a new animated movie of that, you'd be fitted for that, I'd say, as well, because that's like a younger Batman again.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd want people to see me as that. I mean, the other thing is they have to put me in some platform shoes or hire a lot of other short actors. It's just, there is a physical limitation to that character that I think they'd have to do some interesting camera angles. I always laugh when people go like, did you do the mocap for Arkham Origins? And I was like, have you seen how tall Troy is and how short I am? No, I did not do the mocap. You'd have Batman looking up at Joker.
I know we don't have you for all day, Roger, of course. We just want to kind of leave the interview with this. We always ask this at the end of our interviews, but would you have any advice, general advice, aspiring actors, voice actors, performers you want to put out there? Because we have a lot of kind of young filmmakers that would listen to the podcast. Yeah. So if there's anything you want to shout out that would guide them on their way,
It's such a tough question, because in the past I would always be, like Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt have a great book on voice acting, what it's like in the what it's like behind the VO mic, and definitely go do all that stuff. I think it's kind of a given that in this day and age with the internet, you've got all these resources available to you to go out and seek as much research and training as one could find, and you can train all day long and take all the classes that you want all day long in whatever endeavor you're hoping to do. At some point you have to get out and start falling down and getting those scabs and kind of learning, and once that begins, I don't care if it's that you want to learn how to get stronger or if you're going to go on a diet, if you're going to quit something that you think is unhealthy for you, if you're going to try to do something artistic, if you're going to, it's always just stay dedicated, stay passionate, stay curious about the thing that you're on, and stop focusing on where you're not, and just really try to be understanding and never ashamed of being right where you're at, but letting everybody around you know, I'm right here right now, but I'm headed there. And it's like that way. I think if you do have an opportunity for networking or somebody who's going to go, so what do you want to do? Never say you're an aspiring. Just say, oh, I'm a working voice actor. Right now I'm working mostly in fan dubs and non-union stuff that's local to me, but I'm still, I'm building my resume. I'm getting a tremendous amount of experience. I've trained. It's like if you tell somebody right where you're at and let them know where you're going, it's a very different thing than I'm hoping to be something. And so I just tell people all the time, just stay curious, stay dedicated, stay passionate about it. Then the reality is it is entirely up to you. You might get a foot in the door from somebody saying, hey, you're good, let me introduce you to so-and-so. But even once that's done, you still have to deliver for the so-and-so you just got introduced to. So I could give you a whole bunch of believe in the magic of your dreams and you can do it. And it's like, no, coming from me, I could tell you to do everything I did. It would never work for you. You're not me. I'm not you. I don't know what magic you're going to bring to this industry. And I always tell people, like, the good news is it's entirely up to you. And the bad news is it's entirely up to you. And so, hopefully that's inspiring. But if it's not, then maybe
don't
you're
worry,
not.
We're not looking for a
attempting.
motivational quote. That's well said. Like that's,
I don't want to make you feel good. I just want to have you be realistic. It's like, because
honesty.
I guess, or just practicality. I mean, like, at some point, dreaming about being something, it doesn't necessarily manifest it. But what does manifest it is effort. And that starts by staying dedicated, passionate, and curious so that you don't find yourself getting burnt out. And a quick way to get burnt out is to just fixate and focus on where you're not. I am not Mel Blanc. I am not Kevin Conroy. I am not. You could do that to yourself all day long, but what does that mean? It means that you're not focusing on. But what I am is what I do and what I bring to this, and all I got to do is rely on that and do the best that I can do for what I bring to this business. And I wish more people were able to kind of get there sooner. I definitely was not. but if I'm going to give advice now, it's kind of like, get there as quick as you can. Yeah, get there as quick as you can. Stop being ashamed of where you're at.
Roger, you're an outstanding guest. I mean, I can't
thank
thank you enough for your time today, man. I mean, for two brothers here who grew up playing Arkham Origins, and we spent hours on that. Chris is younger than me, but I was an idiot with video games. He was like guiding me through how to, beat Deathstroke, and we were in the police station where we were fighting like 100 police officers. If you told those two kids, he was like 12, I was 15, something like that one day we're going to be talking to Batman,
my gosh,
never have believed it. So thank you for coming on and making that come true for them.
My camera's after knocking off.
I was just going to say,
thank you. Yeah.
You just bailed on us. Well,
No,
my goodness,
no.
you can imagine what it's like for me, because obviously I take a job and I focus on working in the production and making my director happy and the people that have hired me, that are paying me to do this. I collaborate with them, and all I want to do is make them happy and move them, and then it's so far out of my control, and then next thing you know, 15 years later, you have people kind of going, this character meant a lot to me. Or you meet two brothers with horrifically fake accents that I don't buy it for a second. You guys are from Jersey.
You're
from New Jersey.
You were trying to get our affections here today.
I was like, hey.
See, no,
it's so funny. I had no intention of doing that, but
plot twist. Roger is Irish as well.
There we go. I'm Irish. Top of the morning. I actually am like 97% Irish or something like that. I am exceptionally Irish. I've got to get to Ireland. I hope.
So like your blood is Guinness.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, like, look, I reflect. I don't tan ever. But no, it'd be funny. I have a dream of getting out to Ireland one of these days. So if I'm ever at a con out there or anything like that, I'll be hitting you guys up.
Oh,
we'll get a chance
100%. Get a point
to do a Batman fist bump.
Of course. Is there anything you want to shout out, promote, anything on the channel?
Not really. I tell people, like, follow me on social media, but I'm stepping further and further back from social media as it goes on. So, I'm kind of revamping a bunch of things, and even my approach to social media will probably change in the future. But I am for now on Instagram and X. I was on Blue Sky. I am still not active on Blue Sky. I am still on Blue Sky to retain the account, so nobody tries to do what they tried to do when it first came out, which is to get an account pretending to be me. But no, Instagram and X, you'll see me promote shamelessly all the things that I'm a part of and then things that are coming up if I can talk about it, and then a random night sky photo or a bird photo or random animals and things like that. So yeah, if that appeals to you, go right ahead and follow.
Well, anyway, thanks again, Roger, for your time. I mean, it's been great to meet you.
Thank you guys, both of you as well. I'll say thanks to you guys as well.
Yeah, we don't do H's.
I know, and it's like, and I'm such a jerk for even doing it. Like, this is.
When we talk about your game online, we go, "Oh, it was on the PlayStation tree." We get bullied in the comments
because they say tree.
It's an emoji of a tree.
I love it. I love the PlayStation tree. That's perfect.
That's Ireland for you.
See you, Roger.
I gotta use that. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.